In the mosques and madrasas in Afghanistan, they learn about love and peace and the goodness in the Quran. It's at odds with a country that has been at war for the last 40 years. The recent peace process gave a flicker of hope, and even though it came to an abrupt halt, the fact the Taliban was even talking to the US was in itself a major step forward, suggesting the group's hardline stance may be softening.
I think there is much change in the mentality of the Taliban and also in the political policies of the Taliban. They are not the same Taliban which they came in the environment of seminaries in 1994, in 1996.
They have given up some demands and have changed their thoughts regarding education, democracy and freedom of women's rights. There's been a big change.
But many people, especially women, are not so convinced.
The Taliban might have one kind of message to the international community and a different kind of message to the people of Afghanistan. And that is worrisome because they have to really build the trust with the people of Afghanistan, in particular with the women.
The Taliban was in power for 5 years up until 2001, when the United States invaded Afghanistan after the 9/11 attacks in the US. At first, many Afghans welcomed the group, saying it provided security and ended corruption. But women were always denied education and basic rights, and journalist Hamid ELMI remembers what he describes as a climate of fear.
Even 20 years on, people still remember all those terrible things the Taliban did in Kabul and other cities, and we're scared they can do those things again. We're told they've changed, but few believe that.
Islamic courts imposed strict punishments that included stoning and amputation.
There was a lot of punishment during the Taliban time, but in reality there were very few amputations and executions, and Sharia law worked. The stealing and the killing stopped.
But many fear a return to the days when Kabul football stadium was used to carry out Taliban punishments.
Perhaps the most difficult thing for the Taliban leadership to do, because the Taliban narrative is based on religious belief. So they could not suddenly overnight change that narrative. And it's very difficult for them to sell not only the ceasefire between the United States and Taliban, but also a ceasefire with the Afghan government.
These days, this stadium is being used for what it was intended for, but the Taliban of the 90s still haunt many Afghans. The leadership may have grown wiser and mellowed enough for peace negotiations, but what about the fighters on the ground? How easy will it be to get them to sign up to a peace deal after 18 years of war and dogma? Most believe that peace talks will eventually resume. The overriding factor, however, remains about how much the Taliban has changed, and is it enough to ensure a lasting peace? Tony Birtley, Al Jazeera, Kabul.